Ben, we've got to talk about Eberechi Eze because this is a player that a lot of Arsenal fans still have on their wish list, despite the Gunners doing lots of business already. How likely is it, in your opinion, that this is a transfer that gets completed before the end of the window?
Yeah, I think Arsenal have held the talks on the Eze side and they know that he's keen on the move. They view him more as a number 10, and then you have the option to use Eze or Noni Madueke on that left-hand side. But the feeling is outgoings are going to be as important as just bidding to Crystal Palace. And this is where there's a question mark with both extremes possible over Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard. On the one hand, they've both had outreach to sign a new deal. If the window shuts, you would think that Arsenal will ramp up efforts to tie them down. But with the window open, and even though they've had some positive talks with each player, maybe one of them could depart and it could open up the door. So I think Arsenal have got a big decision to make, because if one of those two leaves, they could pivot for a left-wing specialist. And this is where links throughout the window have come with Rodrigo, but he's expensive, or even Newcastle United's Anthony Gordon, or they go for a number 10, but does that stifle the development and opportunities of Ethan Nwaneri through the centre?
Clive, how keen are you on Eberechi Eze? And I guess the big question around him is, as Ben sort of touched on there, where does he fit in? He's not quite an out-and-out left winger. You feel like he'd be competing maybe with Martin Odegaard if you were to use him in a more central area. So where does he fit into the Arsenal picture for you?
It's not immediately obvious, really. Let's be honest. The way we played last season. There's two sides to this, right? There's the soft factor side. I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't like him on that side of things, because we know his backstory, we know what he does on the pitch, how much joy he brings to the pitch, and his technical ability, which I think is really, really high. Watching the games over in the Far East, I thought some of our technical ability on the ball was quite low, regardless of the fact it's pre-season, we've got heavy legs, etc. You're looking for more technicians, and there's the football side of things. You know, he sort of, I know he's not the same player, but we had a similar problem trying to fit Smith Rowe in once Odegaard was in on the other side. He wasn't quite a left winger. He wasn't quite able to sort of usurp Odegaard in that 10 position, and he wasn't quite an 8. And so tactically, I can see the similar problems, but I almost don't care, because he's a much better player. When the ball comes into his feet, everything changes. Pictures change. People trust him when the ball comes in, so they start to move. And for me, a lot of our creativity is down to the fact of our lack of movement. Why don't you have movement? Because you don't have enough technical ability on the ball, and so you stand and you wait for it to come back to you. When players can beat people, you start to flow, you start to move. I want more of those players in the club, and the manager can work out where they stand.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I've been asked this question a lot over the last week. You know, where would he fit into the picture? For me, it's not about shoehorning him into any one given position. It's about bringing a bit more spontaneity to our attack, bringing someone who plays off the cuff, who's bold, who's brave in the final third. And I think we lack that at Arsenal. And I think by default, when you don't have enough of that, you can go into a kind of more of a structure. And I mean, people might disagree with this, but I always think structures are for defending, not for attacking. You want to see a bit more movement and a bit more sort of bravery. I mean, Nick, where do you stand on the Eberechi Eze thing? Would you have him, and where would he fit in for you?
Mate, I mean, I'd have him for so many reasons. Firstly, I grew up a stone's throw away from Selhurst Park, so, you know, it's not really the thing to say on Inside Gooners, but Palace, my second team, I pay a lot of attention to what Crystal Palace do. And I just think, you know, Clive touched on it there, like, he creates chaos, I think. You know, when Eze picks up the ball, people panic because they don't know what he's going to do. He's got a trick in him, you know what I mean? He's got a great shot on him. He can beat a player. He's got a great pass on him. You know, he's got so many attributes that we need at the moment. You know, we've only got to look at the Spurs game in pre-season. Again, I know it's pre-season and a lot of people are getting carried away, you know, because it's Spurs, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, we struggled to create again in the final third. Like in that, think back to the second half. You know, I know they had a goal, but it was a mistake and they scored a goal from the mistake and blah, blah, blah. But in that second half, it was all Arsenal. But again, similar story to a lot of games last season. We just weren't able to create that final bit of magic. Especially, you know, it would have been amazing in the last, 20 minutes Gyökeres got? In the last 20 minutes to create something for him, bang, would have been great. But yeah, Eze, I think, does that. You know, bring him into the team. He's done it in the Prem for a team that aren't as good as us, let's be honest. If you put him in that midfield, in that 10 spot, I know Odegaard's got it locked down at the minute, but put him in that 10 spot, I think he creates goals. I really do. Yeah,
I completely agree. And I think, you know, you look at the fact that he's developed as well over the last sort of 12 months or so. He's become a much better box crasher and goal scorer as well. Ben, let's talk to you a little bit about Leandro Trossard, because You know, you mentioned that there might need to be some outgoings before Arsenal can really accelerate in their attempts to sign Eberechi Eze. Is Leandro Trossard likely to be one of them? Is he eager to leave the club, from your understanding?
I don't think necessarily Trossard or Martinelli are eager to leave the club, and Arsenal have to be careful how they present this, which is why we're going to hear a lot of not for sale, because like I said before, there's both extremes where if the window shuts, there's a fair chance that Martinelli, Trossard, if still at the club, will continue to speak about extending their contracts and thus protecting their value. But at the right kind of offers, Arsenal will entertain business. Al Nassr already made an inquiry about Gabriel Martinelli. They subsequently have signed João Felix, so they're not looking for a left-sided attacker now. But when they asked, the question was Martinelli's not for sale. So people are naturally assuming that it will be Trossard, more likely if one of them is to go, that could depart, especially given his age. But it's a toss-up in the sense that Trossard is valuable as a squad player and willing to stay, and understand that if another left-sided attacker comes in, his minutes may diminish. Whereas with Martinelli, they can get a much bigger fee if they choose to sell, but they still feel like he has that high ceiling and potential to play a very important role. And this is what makes the situation fascinating. So I think it will be a case of if a box office left-sided attacker arrives, whether that's Eze as a 10 or some of the left wingers that I mentioned before, then Martinelli is actually the one you could change your perspective on if the right kind of fee presents itself. The challenge is that Saudi interest for now has gone away. Trossard could also depart, and I think if Arsenal said to him, look, we're bringing in somebody, you're going to get even less minutes, he would accept that and leave amicably. But suggestions, for example, that Fenerbahce are close or engaged with the player are not correct to my understanding. So you've also only got 4 weeks to find him a club as well. I think there'll be Premier League interest in Leandro Trossard too if Arsenal make him available. So it remains possible that Trossard or Martinelli leaves, but actually at the time we're live, there's nothing advanced or imminent with either departing, which again probably explains why Arsenal haven't yet shown their hand in the market.
What do you know of the situations around Jakob Kivtsov and Alexander Zinchenko? They're two squad players, if you like, that have been talked about as potential departures this summer. Is there anything concrete around those two?
Yeah, very concrete. Jakob Kivtsov is subject at the moment of active talks with Porto. They're the front runner as it stands. Alexander Zinchenko is drawing interest from several clubs, including Fulham. Actually, I can tell you that Anthony Robinson is subject of an approach from Saudi Arabia too. And naturally, if he goes, Fulham might step up their interest. But that contact that Fulham had with Zinchenko was actually widely reported back in June. So now we're heading into August and there's no development yet. Arsenal told Fulham at the time if they were to sell Zinchenko, they'd want about £15 million. So both of these players are possible in terms of exits. At the moment, I would say Kiwior is more advanced and by all accounts is open to a move to Porto. And then, of course, away from the defence, you have Fabio Vieira as well. West Ham United have considered the Arsenal midfielder. And in addition, you've got Stuttgart at the moment, who are really the club pushing to try and get a deal over the line. So I think we'll see a flurry of Arsenal outgoings now, and that's important to trim the squad size, clear a bit of wage bill space, keep the chemistry balanced, and then maybe in the next week or two, we'll start to see Arsenal go for at least one more big signing.
Clive, if you'd have asked me 6 months ago whether I'd sell Jakob Kivtsov this summer, my answer might have been yes. But watching him at the back end of last season, stepping into those big games against Real Madrid, against Paris Saint-Germain, and really sort of growing into the role over time, my view has changed on Jakob Kivtsov. Where are you at with the Polish defender? Would you consider offers for him this summer, or do you see him as an integral part of the squad?
So polite Harry might have been yes to sell him. A lot of people were petrified with coming to those big games, and because they remember the mistakes, right? They remember the issue we had against Leroy Sané, against Bayern Munich, and they extrapolate that forward into other games, other areas. So he's a player that just needs rhythm, and once he's in the team, he looks really, really good. He's passing medium, long distance as good as anybody in the team, and he's always fit and ready, you know, despite not playing for many, many weeks. So I have a big appreciation for him. But issues around Kiwior, maybe Martinelli touching what Ben said, is something we have to think about. Because at this moment in time, the value is in those two players. They're at a decent level and their value's not crashed. And what we tend to do is we hold on to them until the value disappears. And then we ask ourselves, why can't we sell like Chelsea or Liverpool? Well, this is why. So Liverpool could have held on to Jakob Kivtsov, for example, but have taken the money on him, took it early, and said, you know what, he needs to go and play. They've probably got a little buyback in there down the road because he's a really good player, just needs to play. But we don't do that. We hold on to our darlings a little bit longer, and then when they don't quite make it, we're in some trouble. So sometimes, despite liking the players, from a business perspective, you have to move forward and reinvest that money. And it's painful, right? Because I love Martinelli. The goal that we conceded against Spurs when Trossard was slow getting out, was against Newcastle, so when Trossard was slow getting out there, they go down the line and cross it and score. Martinelli plays, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
He's out there quicker, he's sharper, and these sort of things we just grown to just sort of accept. So yeah, it's hard, but if we're serious about really winning, we're going to have to make some painful decisions. And with Andrea Berta in the club now, we're going to learn about how he sells. We've seen how he buys and how he approaches that, and Ben gave a great explanation on how he manipulates the market by adding many, many different targets previously. So now let's see how you sell. That's going to be the next judge.
Nick, just very quick.
We are told that the Gunners are currently prioritising the departure of the Portugal international in order to have more financial leeway in their pursuit of ease. Talks with Stuttgart over a permanent deal are ongoing, with the Bundesliga side looking to bring in a replacement for Al-Ahly-bound Enzo Millot. Sources have confirmed reports from Germany that Stuttgart are looking to pay 20 million for the 25-year-old. Arsenal's initial price tag is likely to be more than this, but all parties appear keen to get a deal done quickly. The North London club's urgency stems from the fact that they would ideally like to get a deal for Eze in place this week. The England star, too, is keen to become an Arsenal player as soon as possible. Eze wants clarity on his future before Sunday's Community Shield clash with Premier League champions Liverpool. Once Vieira's exit is closer to being sorted, Arsenal will make their opening bid for Eze. As Football Transfers recently revealed, the Gunners are looking to submit a first offer in the region of 60 million. If Arsenal can manage to find common ground with Palace this week, Eze is not expected to feature on Sunday. The North London club are confident of agreeing a deal for the 27-year-old. However, the next few days are going to be crucial in determining whether or not Eze will be a Gunners player come the end of the window. He is keen on the move, but he is not actively trying to force through a transfer and could remain at Palace if no agreement is reached. Mikel Arteta has said